Hey, how's it going? I was thinking, I'm actually waiting for some parts on that engine over there. The idle hands are the devil's work tools, I guess. And I started having some thoughts, that I kind of shouldn't have. And I tried to tie those thoughts into, well, what can I do to take care of them? So I thought, well, why don't I just do a little, do a Bible study on it. And then I was actually preparing a sermon that I was going to do. But I think, it's kind of more along the lines of something like this. So I'm going to do it here. And that is, what is godly physical attraction? What is it that, from the physical aspect, does the Bible describe? And yes, I do want to let you know now is that there are going to be topics that are discussed in here that I would feel would be a little inappropriate for anyone who's, I would say, between, anyone under 13, maybe 12 is pushing it, because when you get into that age, you're going to be dealing with this kind of stuff, because that's when the attraction hormones kick in, right? So, if there's any children that you don't want to see this, then obviously now would be a good time to stop and maybe watch it in private. To everyone else, there's a lot of areas, especially nowadays, where they draw the physical attraction from sexual aspects of the woman's body. Examples: breasts, the butt, legs, but they draw the attraction into, basically, they turn it into a sexual thing. Okay. Well, the Bible is very clear that that is not the type of attraction that we're to have. And I kind of, if this were the case and this were true, then I would be 100% at fault with this. Okay, so in essence, I would be self-condemning by saying this, which I feel is kind of right. Well, when you're with somebody, whether it be a spouse or even a girlfriend, really, I think, the difference between being a girlfriend, there are differences between being a girlfriend, being engaged, and obviously being married. Now, married, that's kind of what I'm referring to. Is that when you have your, when you are attracted to her, do you have that primal urge? I guess is the only way I want to describe it. Or is there more of an attraction there that goes deeper than the physical? Right? Is there something else that is on top of that? And that is very much, as any doctor or anybody else will tell you, is that a lot of the times the physical, the emotional and the makeup of her mind and how she thinks, what she talks about, usually overweighs what the physical aspect looks like. And that usually happens over time in long relationships because, we all get older, things start, falling out, hair starts growing in places you don't expect, and there needs to be more than this worldly view of what physical attraction is. Now, you've obviously heard the scripture, if you look at a woman and lusteth after her, that you commit adultery in your heart. Well, now, part of this is being me devil's advocate and whatever, is that, well, now are we saying, okay, so looking after a woman, well, your wife is a woman, and you lust after her, you commit adultery in your heart. Now, that's kind of the context I'm taking it. Okay, I understand that there are other areas of Scripture where it describes, I don't necessarily think that primal sexual urges towards your wife, and that being the only reason why you're engaging in that, I kind of feel is wrong. I don't think that's what the Lord intended anyway. Is there a clear-cut scripture in there? No, but if you just kind of think about that for a minute, and thinking, well, that's kind of being selfish, that's being it's all about me and what I want, when in a marriage it's supposed to be what each other wants, right? So, there can be numerous ways to take that. Okay, so if we're going backwards now we're talking about engagement, obviously there are certain things that make engagement different than marriage. For example, there's numerous other things where you aren't obviously living together, you don't have joint bank accounts. There's all these things that happen, especially when you're later on. But then, what's the physical attraction? What are you attracted to there? Again, is it more of a emotional, or is it a physical? Okay, and then let's go on and let's say, okay, well, just boyfriend, girlfriend, more emotional or physical. Well, if you actually think about this, and we're going backwards for a reason here, if you think about it, and what is it over here when you're married and you're thinking about old age, what is it that's important? So why would that be any different than over here, right? So if you're like looking at the physical attraction, you'll notice the scripture, when it talks about the physical attraction, has nothing to do with the sexual parts of the body. And yeah, this is in Song of Solomon, is where I'm going with that. I was going to go through and read this just read it through and analyze it as I go. But I'm just going to go as thoughts off the top of my head, because this is going to be a sermon. So I'll draw these points and just kind of throw them out here and see what you think. Anyway, the first part of chapter 1 here, it's basically, I'm just going to read certain sections of it. Let's see here where we at. Start with verse 6, I guess. Do not stare at me because I am dark. And yes, I'm reading out of an NIV on this. I am a King James guy. But when I come to Song of Solomon, as I made the comparison, and there are quite a number of differences as far as the type of animal that is written, is mentioned later on here. I think it's in chapter 4. And a few other names that, they just kind of changed the names, which I don't understand that. But I'm going to read it from this, because the aspect that I'm trying to draw here is what the physical aspect actually is. And when we get in there, I'm actually going to read the King James, because it's a little more clear cut. Anyway, so we're in verse 6 here. Do not stare at me because I am dark, because I am darkened by the sun. By the way, King James, verse 6, do not look at me because I am black. Okay, so obviously that's been changed because there's, I don't think that it really matters. It's not about a race thing, a white-black thing, which seems to be so prevalent in the world nowadays for some dang reason. But here it's because I am dark. Well, obviously, they're from Egypt, they're from Africa, okay, so they're going to be black. So if they are, then they are. Anyhow, do not stare at me because I'm dark, because I'm darkened by the sun. My mother's sons were angry with me and made me take care of the vineyards. My own vineyard I have neglected. Kind of took that as she was taking care of other people's households and her household was neglected. That's kind of what I'm taking from that. And so she's kind of a little unsure of herself, But then there in verse 9, by the way, verse 8, where it talks about friends, you'll see in the NIV it says friends. Watch out, because later on we're going to see that they are actually not friends. So right here in verse 9, I liken you, my darling, to a mare harnessed to one of the chariots of Pharaoh. Your cheeks are beautiful with earrings, your neck with strings and jewels. We will make your earrings of gold instead of silver. And she says, while the king was at his table, my perfume spread its fragrance. My lover is to me a sachet of myrrh resting between my breasts. My lover is to me a cluster of henna blossoms from the vineyard of En-Gedi. So obviously there's some sweet talk going on back and forth here. He says, next in 15, how beautiful you are, my darling, oh, how beautiful your eyes are doves. And her, how handsome you are, my lover, how charming, and our bed is verdant. Let's see, what's that say in King James? And also our bed is green. King James Version is green. Then he says, the beams of our house are cedars, the rafters are firs. So this is the initial impression they have of each other, okay, and I don't see anything here referring to a sexual nature. I think the first thing is brass in verse 13 there. She's just referring to where that sachet of incense is sitting, right? She's not talking about anything beyond that, which obviously people do nowadays. Okay, so you can see their initial impressions here. Yes, we're talking about the physical, but understand there's nothing sexual in nature quite there. When you get in here, it talks about the bed being green. It's not barren. It's not overgrowth. It's not weeded out. It's green because it's a comfortable place, I'm sure. You can draw a whole bunch of clues of what green is. To me, I take it like walking in a park, right? It's just nice. It's pleasant. It's nothing out of the ordinary. It's how it should be. Chapter 2. Obviously, her speaking here. I am a rose of Sharon, a lily of the valleys. He says, like a lily among thorns is my darling among the maidens. So he's saying, hey, you're better than all these other ones out there, right? Now, here is, I'm going to kind of skip around here. If you come down chapter 2, verse 8, this is kind of how she initially describes her. Right, listen, my lover, look, here he comes, leaping across the mountains, bounding over the hills. My lover is like a gazelle or a young stag. Look, there he stands behind our walls, gazing through the windows, peering through the lattice. My lover spoke to me and said, "Arise, my darling, my beautiful one, and come to me. See, the winter is past, the rains are over and gone, flowers appear on the earth, the season of spring has come. The cooing of doves is heard in our land. The fig trees form its early fruit, the blossoming vines spread their fragrance. Arise, come, my darling, my beautiful one, come with me." I mean, obviously there is, quite an attraction there with him. But again, nothing I see that's anything beyond what it should be in a relationship, And then here we go. And then he says, "My dove in the clefts of the rock, in the hiding place of the mountainside, show me your face, let me hear your voice. For your voice is sweet, and your face is lovely. Catch for us the foxes, little foxes that ruin the vineyards, our vineyards that are in bloom." To me it sounds like, hey, he finds her voice sweet, and obviously they won't, when you're running around catching the little foxes that ruin the vineyards, they're out there working together or doing something together, whether it be like cleaning something up together or working on something together, right? Obviously that must be something they did in the vineyards. Maybe actually in this case, being Solomon, maybe the workers did that, but maybe he went down there every so often for fun to do it. I don't know why I would say that, but that's a good thought about that. And she says, 16, "My lover is mine and I am his. He browses among the lilies until the day breaks and the shadows flee. Turn, my lover, be like the gazelle or like the young stag on the rugged hills. All night long in my bed I looked for," this is going on into chapter 3, "all night long in my bed I looked for the one my heart loves. I looked for him but did not find him." So now this is describing her by herself, right? I will get up now and go about the city through the streets and the squares. I will search for the one my heart loves. So I looked for him but did not find him. The watchmen found me as they made their rounds of the city. "Have you seen the one my heart loves?" Scarcely I passed them when I found the one my heart loves. I held him and would not let him go, till I had brought him to my mother's house, the room, the one who conceived me. Daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you, by the gazelles and the doves of the field, do not arouse or awaken love until it so desires. Then he continues on here in 6. "Who's this coming up from the desert like a column of smoke, perfumed with myrrh and incense, made from all the spices of the merchant? Look at Solomon's carriage, escorted by 60 warriors, the noblest of Israel, all among them wearing the sword, all experienced in battle, each one of them with his sword at his side, prepared for the terrors of the night. King Solomon made for himself the carriage. He made it of wood from Lebanon. Its posts he made of silver, its bases of gold. Its seat was upholstered with purple, its interior lovely and laid by daughters of Jerusalem. Come now, you daughters of Zion, look at King Solomon wearing the crown with which his mother crowned him on the day of his wedding, the day his heart rejoiced." So there's obviously, she woke up, wanted to find him, couldn't find him, and went searching for him, found him, and so it's really deep. Now, there's a few things. Now I'm gonna kind of break away from this because now we're gonna get into the sections that are really interesting. This next in chapter 4 is him describing her. Okay, so this is his. Out of everything in here, there are little bits and pieces, like single verses, where he describes her. But this is actually one where there is, where it's continuous. There's a lot of talk in that. And then later on, it will be her that I will go into describing that, and we'll continue there. So now we're in chapter 4. So this is him describing her. Okay. "How beautiful you are, my darling! Oh, how beautiful! Your eyes behind your veil are doves. Your hair is like the flock of goats descending from Mount Gilead. Your teeth are like a flock of sheep just shorn, coming up from the washing. Each has its twin, none of them is alone. Your lips are like a scarlet ribbon, your mouth is lovely. Your temples behind your veil are like the halves of a pomegranate. Your neck like the Tower of David, built with elegance. On it hang 1,000 shields, all of them with shields of warriors. Your 2 breasts are like 2 fawns, the twin fawns of gazelle that browse among the lilies. Until the day breaks and the shadows flee, I will go to the mountain of myrrh and to the hill of incense. All beauty you are, my darling, there is no flaw in you. Come with me from Lebanon, my bride, come with me from Lebanon, descend from the crest of Amana, from the top of Snare, the summit of Hermon, from the lion's dens, and the mountain haunts of the leopards. You have stolen my heart, my sister, my bride. You have stolen my heart with one glance of your eyes, the one jewel of your necklace. How delightful is your love, my sister, my bride. How much more pleasing is your love than wine. and the fragrance of your perfume than any spice. Your lips drop sweetness as the honeycomb, my bride. Milk and honey are under your tongue. The fragrance of your garments is like that of Lebanon. You are a garden locked up, my sister, my bride. You are a spring enclosed, a sealed fountain. Your plants are an orchard of pomegranates, with choice fruits, with henna and nard, and saffron, calamus and cinnamon, every kind of incense tree and myrrh and aloes, and all the finest spices. You are a garden fountain, well-flowing water streaming down from Lebanon. And she says, awake, north wind, come south wind, blow on my garden, his fragrance may spread abroad. Let my lover come into his garden and taste his choice fruits. So obviously here in 4, he's obviously describing her. There was obviously a reference right there in verse 5, 4 verse 5, where it talks about his breast. But her breast, but it's not referring to it in a very, sexual way. I don't see anything among that. It's obviously an attractive part of the female body. But as far as there being any type of hidden agenda there when he refers to him, I don't see that at all. And one other thing I did want to mention is, if you notice coming down here, when he refers to her, he refers in 10 there, how delightful is your love, my sister, my bride. My sister, my bride. Well, that's kind of a weird addition there, because there earlier, back up here in verse 8 is my bride. King James actually says my spouse is what's saying over there in the King James Version. But again, down there in verse 9, you come over here, the King James Version, thou hast ravished my heart, my sister, my spouse, that thou hast ravished my heart with one of thine eyes, thine one chain of thy neck. So there's obviously having the sister in there, it's a little bit of a connotation to how he feels about her. And how do you feel about your sister? Well, you're very protective of her. You always want what's best for her. You'll keep her protected from people who are, after the wrong things. And that's the interesting thing, that if you notice the connotation of how he's describing her, it's very much in a lovely setting. There's nothing lustful about that. There's nothing sexual that I see over here. There are, right here, when I start in, I'm going to go ahead and start. Verse 5, or chapter 5, excuse me, is where it's, I'm going to read it, but there's, I don't want to say there's a little connotation behind it. I'll go ahead and say it, because at this point there should only be adults listening. Obviously, when I read through this, there's a certain type of I want to say a lustful desire, but obviously it's for him, right? She's not thinking about anyone else. She's not referring to that. Her only thoughts are of him, and so she. Well, let's read it. Chapter 5 here. Says, I have come into my garden, my sister, my bride. I have gathered my myrrh and with my spice. I have eaten my honeycomb with my honey, and I have drunk my wine and my milk. And then it says, friends, O eat, O friends, and drink your fill, O lovers. I was thinking about this for a long time. Where's the friends come in there? And I realized later what it is. Then here we go in verse 2 here in chapter 5. I slept, but my heart was awake. Listen, my lover is knocking. So she's sleeping now. That's at least what I'm taking here. Listen, my lover is knocking. Open to me, my sister, my darling, my dove, my flawless one. My head is drenched with dew, my hair with the dampness of the night. I have taken off my robe. Must I put it on again? I washed my feet. Must I soil them again? So, she's kind of thinking, okay, so listen, my lover is knocking. She's already in bed. She's already ready to go to sleep. Well, do I really want to get dressed again and get my feet back on again? Put my sandals back on again? And then there in verse 4, my lover thrust his hand through the latch opening. My heart began to pound for him. And so the minute he made extra effort, right, then she didn't care. I arose to open for my lover, and my hands dripped with myrrh, and my fingers were flowing with myrrh on the handles of the lock. I opened the door, and my lover had left. He was gone. In the NIV, actually, it says, I opened unto my beloved had withdrawn himself and was gone. My soul failed when he spake. I sought him, but I could not find him. I called him, but he gave no answer. So, I don't know if this is actually in a dream or what. It's a little kind of weird here, but yeah. And here's where I'm trying to go with this, okay? And this is the interesting thing. The friends, I do not believe are friends. I believe that they are the other, whether they be the concubines or the male concubines, is kind of what I believe the friends are, okay? Because as we start reading on here, let's start in verse 7, okay? The watchmen found me, and as they made the rounds of the city, they beat me and bruised me. They took away my cloak, those watchmen of the walls. O daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you, if you find my lover, what will you tell him? Tell him that I am faint with love. Okay, now here's where it describes the friends. How is your beloved better than others, most beautiful of women? How is your beloved better than others, that you charge us so? So when it says, O daughters of Jerusalem, that's how I'm taking this. I'm taking this as kind of their, the concubines and things, because I know how Solomon had, it mentioned how many he had there. Maybe I can go back there and look, but you would understand that I think it's at least 1,000 or something like that. I don't know, but it was a lot. And so maybe they're kind of jealous that now Solomon's paying all the attention to her. Okay, I don't know. But then she continues on, and then she describes a little bit more. My lover is a radiant beauty, astounding among 10,000. His head is purest gold, his hair is wavy, black as a raven. His eyes are like doves, but the water streams, washed in milk, melted like jewels. His cheeks are like beds of spice, yielding perfume. His lips are like lilies, dripping with myrrh. His arms are rods of gold, set with crystallite. His body is like polished ivory, decorated with sapphires. I'm going to skip over here. The King James is actually a little more better than that. Starting back in verse 11. His head is the most fine gold. His flocks are bushy and black as a raven. His eyes are the eyes of doves by the rivers of waters, washed with milk and filthy set. His cheeks are as bed of spices, as sweet flowers. His lips are like lilies, dropping sweet-smelling myrrh. His hands are as gold rings set with beryl. His belly as bright ivory overlaid with sapphires. His legs are as pillars of marble set upon sockets of fine gold. His countenance is as Lebanon, excellent as the cedars. His mouth is most sweet. Yea, he is altogether lovely. He is my beloved, and this is my friend, O daughters of Jerusalem. So you can see here, she says he's lovely, he's beloved, and a friend. So he's everything. He's everything to her. And now we're going to get into the story. Okay, so I'm going to kind of narrate this, and you see if I'm doing this right, because at the beginning of verse 7, you'll see. So verse 6 here, where has your lover gone, most beautiful woman, and which way did your lover turn, that we may look for him with you? So they want to go with him, or with her, to go find him, because obviously, there's they want to have some attention there for herself. She says, my lover has gone down to his garden, to the beds of spices, and browse in the gardens, and to gather the lilies. And my lover's, I am my lover's, and my lover's is mine. He browsed among the lilies. And now here's him. He says, you are beautiful, my darling, as Tisra, lovely as Jerusalem, majestic as troop with banners. Turn your eyes from me, they overwhelm me. Your hair like a flock of goats, descending from Gilead. Your teeth are like a flock of sheep, coming up from the washing. Each has its twin, not one of them is alone. And it's interesting right there, each one is a twin, not one is alone. Obviously, she's not missing teeth. It refers back to that there. I think it's in chapter 1 or 2. So obviously that's an attractive feature. Your temples behind your veil are like halves of pomegranate. 60 queens are there may be, 80 concubines and virgins beyond number. But my dove, my perfect one, is unique, the only daughter of her mother, the favorite of the one who bore her. The maidens saw her and called her blessed. The queens and concubines praised her. And then there's what the ladies say. Who is this that appears like the dawn, as the fair as the moon, bright as the sun, majestic as the stars in procession? So they're kind of talking about her, I take it. Now this is where I'm going to go with this, okay? So starting in verse 11 here, it's kind of a story. Okay, now this is how I'm taking this. So in verse 11 there it says, I went down to the grove of nut trees to look at the new growth in the valley, to see if the vines had budded, or if the pomegranates were in bloom. Before I realized it, my desire set me among the royal chariots of my people. It seemed almost like before he realized that his desire among the royal chariots of his people, it's almost like it was racing right towards her. Okay. And then it says in 13 there, come back, O Shulamite, come back, that we may gaze on you, right? And then he says, why would you gaze on the Shulamite? This is continuing on 13. Why would you gaze on the Shulamite as on the dance of Merihim? Come back to the King James, which I'm going to read the rest of the King James. So I went down to the garden of the nuts to see the fruits of the valley, and to see whether the vine flourished and the pomegranates budded. Wherever I was aware, my soul made me like the chariots of Abinadab. Return, return, O Shulamite, return, that we may look upon thee. What ye shall say to the Shulamite, as it were the company of two armies? Okay, so if you look at that, well, how would you look at a woman in the company of two armies? Well, obviously very lusting, right? I mean, you're just all about the lust, okay? So, the NIV kind of breaks it down. They say, okay, he said this, she said that, and he said that. I kind of will read it for what it is. And it could be that when you continue in chapter 7, you can look at this one of two ways, okay? You're looking at this either as the friends describing her in a lustful way, or it's describing, he is describing what it actually means, as it were, in the company of two armies at the end of verse 13. Okay, but this is where it goes. Now listen to the difference of the connotation. Okay, chapter 1, verse 7. How beautiful your sandal feet, O princess daughter. Your graceful legs are like jewels, the works of the craftsman's hands. Your navel is a rounded goblet that never lacks blended wine. Your waist a mound of wheat encircled by lilies. Your breasts like two fawns, twins of a gazelle. Your neck like an ivory tower. Your eyes like the pools of Hebron by the gate of Bath Ravin. Your nose like the Tower of Lebanon looking toward Damascus. Your head crowns you like mint caramel. Your hair like a royal tapestry. The king is held captive by its tresses. How beautiful you are, and how pleasing, O love, with your delights. Your stature is like that of the palm, and your breasts like the clusters of fruit. I said, I will climb the palm tree and take hold of its fruit. May your breasts be like the clusters of the vine, your fragrance like your breath like apples, and your mouth like the best wine. And then obviously there at the end of the verse it says, may the wine go straight up to thy lover, gently flowing over lips and teeth. Now the NIV breaks it between in verse 9 between the two sentences there. Whereas the paragraph in the King James is in 10. Okay, so it's I kind of am taking the King James version better, and if you read it like that, it changes the connotation. Because if you go back to the King James, it says, "And the roof of thy mouth is in verse 9. And the roof of thy mouth is like the best wine for my beloved, that goeth down sweetly, causing the lips of those that are asleep to speak." Now, when it says "for my beloved," now is that referring to that? Is it still him? So that's why I'm kind of more leaning towards him. But it could also be the way they're describing her. And obviously, you read that, it's very sexually oriented, right? But then listen to her reaction to that. So obviously, I look at it as kind of catcalls. But then continuing on, it says right here, even in the King James, let's start the next one. She's saying, I am my beloved's, and his desire is towards me, right? So she's cutting it right there. It says, hey, I'm his, right? His desire is for me. So she's being little things. So I'll read that. This one though. I belong to my lover, and his desires for me. Come, my lover, let us go to the countryside. Let us spend the night in the villages. Let us go up early in the vineyards to see if the vines have budded, if their blossoms have opened, if their pomegranates are in bloom. There I will give you my love. The mandrakes send out their fragrance, and at our door is very delicacy, both old, new and old, that I have stored up for you, my lover. As you can see here, when it's when he talks about her and what she wants to do, I don't hear anything, that people would say that they want to do that's of a very graphic nature. I don't see that at all. It seems to me that, when you actually read what they are describing each other, it's very different. If you read chapter 7 there, out of context, reading purely for the chapter there and not understanding what is actually happening, you may take that as, oh, I need to feel like this, it's okay. And some people actually do that. They'll read this in chapter 7 here and say, oh, okay, yeah, well, it's in the scripture, then I can use it. No. Context, people. Coming over here in chapter 8, if only you were to me like a brother. See, so obviously, this is her talking, If only you were to me like a brother, who was nursed by my mother's breast. Then if I found you outside, I would kiss you, and no one would despise me. That's kind of interesting because, I think it's, no one would despise her because everybody's jealous that she has King Solomon, and nobody else does, right? It's kind of, because if it was his brother and she kissed him, then nobody would think anything of it, right? But if they're, I would lead you, and this is verse 2, and I would lead you and bring you to my mother's house, and she who has taught me. I would give you this spice wine to drink, the nectar of my pomegranates. His left arm is under my head, his right hand embraces me. Daughters of Jerusalem, I charge you, do not arouse or waken my love until it so desires. And then 5, who is this coming up from the desert leaning on her lover? Under the apple tree I roused you, this is her talking, under the apple tree I roused you, there your mother conceived you, there she who was in labor gave you birth. Place me like a seal over your heart, like a seal on your arm, for love is as strong as death, its jealousy unyielding as the grave. Ah, yes. Well, I guess it is fitting that she would say this, it is in the scripture, but, oh man, for love is as strong as death, its jealousy unyielding as the grave. Well, I guess they were jealous back then too, huh? It burns like a blazing fire, like a mighty flame. Many waters cannot quench love, rivers cannot wash it away. If one were to give all his wealth for the house of love, it would be utterly scorned. Yeah, I got to that verse when I was doing this study, and I was like, well, I've been there. You give everything you can, thinking that money will buy you love, and it doesn't. It just you end up scorning your own house. You end up losing everything because you're looking for the wrong thing, or you find the wrong ones and thinking that because the way this world is, the materialistic stuff will get you. No, it won't. And then eventually they get the point, right? The friends, they get the point. Okay, and whatever. So here, obviously, in verse 8, it says, we have a young sister, and her breasts are not yet grown. So obviously, this is a younger woman who's not yet been pledged or married or whatever. What shall we do for our sister for the day she is spoken for? If she is a wall, we will build towers of silver on her. If she is a door, we will enclose her with panels of cedar. And so it's kind of like, they're not sure, okay, what do we do? Because they probably want to make her get in the same favor this one girl is, I don't know. But, if she's a wall, we'll build towers. If she's a door, we'll enclose with cedars. I don't really know what that's referencing. You could probably draw a few references from yourself. Maybe a wall, meaning she's very, what do you call it? A very strong-willed woman. And so you want to put towers of silver on her, right? If she's a door, maybe it's somebody that she's very open and allows you to come in and talk to her. Then you enclose with panels of cedar, so it's a very sweet, smell. So when you're in there and you're talking, it's a very comforting feeling, And here's what she says in verse 10: I am a wall, my breasts are like towers. Thus I have become in his eyes like one bringing contentment. Solomon had a vineyard in Baal Hamon. He let out his vineyard to tenants. Each was to bring for its fruit 1,000 shekels of silver. But mine own vineyard is mine to give. The 1,000 shekels are for you, O Solomon, and 200 are for those who tend its fruit. Lover, you dwell in the garden with friends and attendants. Let me hear your voice. And she says, come away, my lover, and be like the gazelle or young stag on the spice-laden mountains. And so, I don't really hear, actually, I don't think I've heard one sermon come from Song of Solomon yet. And I don't know, maybe people just avoid it or whatever. But you can draw some really big conclusions from this. And the interesting thing I want to point out is a lot of what they're describing here, there is, a lot of it's physical. You can kind of figure out there is some emotional aspects behind this, like what draw their love in the first place. You could say, well, her friend, her lover, her sister. Obviously there's connotations of a deep relationship that happens before you gain to this point. Now, why this all came out, I don't know. I guess it's because a lot of times I might think, well, we can have certain thoughts about what we find attractive in somebody else. Now, are those godly or ungodly thoughts? Well, I got to be honest with you, and I fall into the same boat. When there's thoughts that come into your head that are very, what's the word I'm looking for? Primal in nature, I guess. Very primalistic urges that have nothing to do with godly values or anything. To me, that's not right. Now, it's not right, and I even do it. Okay, we're all guilty of it. But maybe by me kind of understanding this, it'll allow me to kind of change that over time. I don't know, but that's what the scripture says. So obviously this is very self-condemning on me in some way. But lust is a very dangerous, tempting thing. Once you get involved in that, and you look at a woman in a way that is not intended, it's very hard to break that habit. It takes a lot of loneliness and a lot of time to get to a point where you don't look at a woman in a lustful way. If you allow yourself to start that, and if you're young enough to see that you're starting to feel certain things towards people of the opposite sex that you haven't had before, just understand that there needs to be a certain control on that, because it will hurt your life. It will destroy you if you do not put a rein on it early and keep it in a godly context. It will destroy your life. So that's why you need to pay very close attention to what it is that is the physical attractiveness. Okay, and it cannot relate around the sexual attractiveness. I mean, people like to say, well, there needs to be some physical attraction there. Well, yes, but remember, they say physical attraction. The Bible describes what is physical attraction. It's describing it here. And what I'm gathering is it's her entire body, right? And it's all glorified equally here. I don't see anything really pointed out. There are things mentioned twice. There's, it's cool. But when you get into chapter 7 and you're looking at all this stuff, it's like, wow, where did that come from? Context obviously will tell you this is not. This is a lustful description in chapter 7 there. So, I'm just throwing it out there. You can take it for what it is. But to me, it seems like, that when you're dealing with just sexual desire in a primal way, then that is lust. That is what that is. And if you're not in a godly relationship, then, and like I said, those are between you and the Lord. And some may criticize me for saying that. Well, it is. If you study the scripture and listen to it, I'll give an example, marriage, for example. I like to see the scripture where it talks about how long you have to be engaged for, or that you have to be engaged before you get married, or why you just can't get married. And, there are scriptures in here where people are getting married and they don't even know each other, and they're committed for the rest of their life. Times change, I guess. For me, if it ever came down to that again, I would say that I would get married again, but I'm not going to put a time limit on it. I mean, I don't believe that it's good to do that. Don't put time constraints on that. So, I could, if the Lord revealed Himself to me to find a woman that was for me, and it worked out just perfectly, I'd get married the next day. Why wait? And people say, well, that's the problem there. You can't, and if you're in the Spirit and you're praying about it, and the other person is also praying about it and feeling led the same way, and you're in a godly relationship, who is other people to talk to you about your own relationship? You can get advice, for example, from people like me who have been down the wrong road a few times, or get it from the Scripture. What does the Scripture say about it? Then you work on that between you and the Lord. You work that out between you, the Lord, your spouse, and the Lord. That's how it should be worked out. For me, unfortunately, chapter 7 was kind of how I looked at women for a very long time, because unfortunately, all the way the world is, that's what it's geared toward, but that's an emptiness that is, it's an emptiness that even though you may recover from it and get in a relationship, it's an emptiness that will remain with you for the rest of your life. And it's a problem that you need to nip, especially the young you are. Don't get involved in those kind of things. Don't do anything that gratifies your own desire, because that also is a selfish thing to do. So, and it's hard sometimes because everybody fails to that. I'm no exception, okay? But I just wanted to get out there something that has to do with what the Scripture says about the physical attraction. It seems here this is very clear-cut as what it is. So I hope this helped you out, and I hope I wasn't too offensive, but it's Scripture, so...